Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here today. We're jumping right in because we are looking at something deeply fascinating, the profound psychology of abandoned spaces. Today, we're going to examine three very different, very real places that all share one chilling characteristic. They were completely left behind. And by unpacking the evidence, we're going to understand exactly why these empty spaces captivate us, why they terrify us, and ultimately, what they reflect back about our own everyday lives.
I want you to picture a hospital in West Virginia. Inside, patient files are still sitting directly on the desks. They aren't packed away in some dusty storage room or neatly tucked into filing cabinets. They are right there on the desks, lying wide open. You can still read the names, the intake dates, the diagnoses, all written out in the careful handwriting of doctors who fully assumed they'd read them again someday. The chairs? Still pulled out from the tables. It genuinely looks as if the staff just stepped away for a quick coffee break, except they stepped away in 1994, and literally no one has sat in those chairs since.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is that the truly haunting part isn't the physical decay. It's the stillness of things that were never meant to be still. It's seeing a coffee mug left sitting on a windowsill, or spotting a single child's shoe at the end of a long hallway. It's finding a clock permanently stopped at a specific time, and feeling your brain try to calculate that time against whatever disaster happened there. Your mind keeps insisting that someone should be there, that the absence itself is just fundamentally wrong. And it's that quiet, sourceless wrongness that tends to follow you home.
Part 1. A Hospital Left Behind. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. Construction on this massive, hand-cut stone marvel began way back in 1858.
Let's look inside to really grasp the medical mindset of that era. So the asylum was designed around a specific theory called the Kirkbride Plan, and this was actually revolutionary for its time. The core idea suggested that the physical shape of a building could actively help heal a troubled mind. Architects used long staggered wings, they pumped in natural light, and prioritized fresh air. The genuine belief was that a humane, beautiful environment could do the heavy lifting that medical science just couldn't do yet. At its heart, it was a real attempt at compassion.
And this brilliantly illustrates the horrific gap between those good intentions and the eventual grim reality. This massive facility was originally built to comfortably house just 250 patients, but by the mid-20th century, that number had exploded to 2,400. The very wards explicitly designed to feel open and airy became packed well beyond any reasonable human capacity. Patients were literally forced to sleep on the floors and in the hallways. The compassion the building was founded on completely collapsed under the sheer weight of overcrowding.
With that overcrowding came horrific shifts in care. The treatments that replaced that initial compassion are pretty difficult to even think about. We're talking hydrotherapy, where patients were submerged in either ice water or scalding water, depending on their diagnoses. We're talking lobotomies performed with tools that looked way more like standard kitchen implements than surgical instruments. And at the dark center of the whole facility was Ward R. Known as the back ward, it housed the most violent patients. It was a place so intensely feared that the staff actively avoided it whenever they could. Tragically, some patients sent to Ward R were never documented as leaving.
When the asylum finally closed its doors in 1994, the last staff members walked out and essentially left everything behind. Records, medical equipment, personal belongings of patients who had absolutely nowhere else to go. Today, the building is open for tours, and people from all over come to walk these exact wards. And here's the wild part. Visitors independently report the exact same strange phenomena. Sounds echoing from empty rooms, the distinct feeling of being followed, and specifically in Ward R, a heavy, sourceless pressure. A very real sensation that something in that empty room does not want you there.
Part 2. A city permanently finished. Pripyat, Ukraine. We are shifting focus from a building of confinement to an entire city built in 1970 on boundless optimism.
Just think about this number for a second. 26. At its peak, Pripyat was home to nearly 50,000 people. But what makes the story so deeply tragic is their youth. In 1986, the average age of a Pripyat resident was only 26 years old. This wasn't some old, decaying town. It was a vibrant community. They had a swimming pool, 16 nursery schools, a grand culture palace with a cinema and a dance hall. It was an entire city designed and built around the confident assumption of a very bright future. But that future vanished in an absolute instant. The timeline of this disaster is just staggering. On April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the nearby Chernobyl plant explodes.
But authorities didn't want to cause a panic, right? So for 36 agonizing hours, no evacuation was ordered. For a day and a half, these young residents simply went about their lives. They went to work, sent their kids to school, walking right past a reactor, actively poisoning the air they were breathing. Adding to the heartbreak, a brand new amusement park was scheduled to open just days later, on May 1st. It never operated for a single day.
So the crucial point is, when the evacuation finally did happen, authorities gave a devastating directive. Residents were explicitly told to pack only enough for 3 days. They were promised they'd be back. Because of that lie, they left their furniture. They left personal photographs. They left children's toys on the floor, food sitting right there in the refrigerators. In the schools, textbooks were left wide open on desks. People literally locked their front doors, fully expecting to return. And of course, they never did.
If you look at modern photos of Pripyat, you see this incredible, eerie preservation. Entire forests growing through the streets, moss climbing up apartment walls, that iconic yellow Ferris wheel standing perfectly still. But all that visual beauty masks an invisible horror. What you can't see is that the ground beneath the city is heavily, irreversibly radioactive. Even the wild apples growing in those abandoned orchards actually contain deadly cesium-137 right in their flesh.
And the timeline for this invisible poison is just mind-blowing. 20,000. That's how many years the soil in Pripyat will remain dangerous. 20,000 years. The city might look like it's just paused, waiting for life to resume. But science has declared it permanently finished. It is the only city on Earth where the end date is known, mathematically fixed, and completely unchangeable.
Part 3. The Island of Watching Dolls. Xochimilco, Mexico. For our final location, we journey to a place where the stillness feels much more intentional and entirely unsettling.
The story of this island revolves entirely around one guy, Julian Santana Barrera. Julian lived completely alone on this island for 50 years as its sole caretaker. He claimed that shortly after arriving, he found the body of a young girl who had drowned in the canal near the island's edge. Unable to save her, he believed her spirit just stayed behind. So, what did he do? He began hanging dolls. Hundreds of plastic dolls hanging from trees, nailed to fences, strung between branches. His goal was to appease her, prove she wasn't forgotten, and give her a vessel to inhabit, specifically so she wouldn't inhabit him. One doll became 10, which became dozens, which became hundreds. For half a century, he traded his homegrown vegetables for dolls from visitors, pulling trash dolls from the canals, decorating every single inch of his isolated home.
Now here's a detail tour guides usually save for the very end, spoken pretty quietly. In the weeks leading up to his death, Julian's family noticed a terrifying shift in him. He was frightened, he was barely sleeping at all, he confided in his family that the dolls were calling out to him at night, that he could actually hear them whispering his name from out in the dark trees. His family just assumed he had been alone for way too long, that 50 years of deep isolation had finally gotten to him. But then came the morning of April 17, 2001. Julian was found dead, face down in the water, and he had drowned in the exact same section of the canal where he always said the young girl died, the very same spot. He lived on that island safely for 50 years without a single incident, and no explanation was ever found for how he ended up in the water. Today, the island is a huge tourist destination. And the dolls? They are still hanging in the trees, exactly as they always have been, just watching.
Part 4. The shape of a life. Okay, let's dive into what this all actually means. Let's bring this together and figure out why these extremes matter to us and what they say about the spaces we occupy every single day. The most vital thing to realize about the abandoned places we've explored is something no photograph can ever truly capture. Before the disaster, before the closing, before the tragedy, they were completely, utterly ordinary. People woke up and went to work. Kids played. Couples danced in that culture palace in Pripyat. Somebody cared enough to hang curtains in a window. Somebody took the time to plant a garden. But somewhere between then and now, a shift occurred. The ordinary became totally unreachable. And what was left behind was merely the shape of a life, with the actual life suddenly removed.
And hey, this isn't just about famous ruins halfway across the globe. You pass buildings exactly like this every single day without even looking twice. Boarded up windows on your morning commute, overgrown, empty lots in your own neighborhood, structures that used to mean the absolute world to someone who is simply no longer around to tell you about it. The stillness is everywhere once you know how to look for it. Which leaves us with one final thought to really chew on. The real question worth sitting with isn't just about what happened inside the dramatic, famous places we already know about. It's this:
What happened inside the ordinary ones you have driven past 100 times and never even thought to ask? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep asking questions, keep looking closely, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.